Okay, this is our first lab. We will use 2 switches for the distribution layer and 1 switch for the access layer. I'm gonna take a while to cable this. Hold on a second. Okay, it's set up now. The VTP domain that we will be using will be network. So let's start up the devices. This will take a couple of minutes. Okay, first of all, notice all these messages that the device sends. You can see them again issuing show logging. So with show logging, you will see all the messages that were sent when the device went up. Next thing you want to do is disable IP domain lookup. Notice this, I'm going to mistype a command and see what happens. The Cisco operating systems believes that you want to connect to a host, and it will try to figure out the IP address that belong to that host. So if you every time you make a typo, this will happen, and you will be losing about 40 or 50 seconds. So in order to avoid that, configure no IP domain lookup. Next, you want to configure your host names. Sorry about that. Host name, distribution 1, and let's see, no IP domain lookup, host name, access, and this is distribution 2. So notice that the connection between these switches is on access ports. Why it is access? If we see the status of the interface with this command switch port, you will see that it is configured as auto. The other side is also auto, so the trunk is not coming up because both sides are auto. If one side were dynamic desirable, this will come up as a trunk, but auto and auto ends up having the port in access mode. So the operational mode is access. So remember this for the time being. So let's see how many VLANs we have. By default, we only have VLAN 1. These are unsupported VLANs, so ignore them. Let's see how many VLANs we have here. Also 1. Here, also 1. So let's configure VTP. If I issue show VTP status, I see that the default is version 1, domain name set to null, and it is a server. So that applies to every switch. By default, VTP starts as version number 1, VTP domain set to null, server. The configuration revision is 0. So let's start up VTP domain network. Remember that is the domain that we'll be using. VTP version, we'll set it to 3 because we want the extended VLAN range. And VTP mode will be server. That is the mode by default, so it is not necessary to set that, but just to show you how. So VTP domain network, and the VTP version is set to 3, and VTP in the version and mode server. Okay, BTP domain network. Oops, network. BTP version is set to 3, and BTP mode will be client. So let's issue show BTP status version 3, domain name is network, operating mode client, and the configuration revision is 0. So I'm going to try to create a VLAN here, VLAN 2. Oh, we come across this error. BTP VLAN configuration not allowed when device is not the primary server for VLAN database. Let's issue show BTP status. This is operating as server. Let's see this one, show BTP status as server. So there is no primary server yet in the network. So I will set this as primary with this command, BTP primary. This can take a while. Okay, it asks me to confirm. Okay, right, issue show the BTP status. This is now the primary server. Notice that. And when I have a primary server, I can start creating, modifying, and deleting VLANs. So VLAN number 2, name users, and I just created a VLAN in the server. This should get distributed to the other switches, right? Well, wrong. It is not getting distributed because I have access interfaces between the switches. I must set up trunks. So let's set up trunks with the help of TTP. So I will configure switch port mode dynamic desirable. On this side, remember that the other side is dynamic auto by default. And this, if I set this side to dynamic desirable, the trunk should come up because auto with dynamic desirable form a trunk. Let's do this in the other distribution switch. Interface range. Remember to use range to be able to configure several interfaces at the same time. 0 to 1. Switch port mode dynamic desirable, and the trunk should come up. Show interface trunk. Notice that in this side of the trunk I have auto and it is trunking now. Why? Because the other side was set up as desirable. So the trunking is up, and notice that it negotiated a trunking protocol known as ISL. That is a Cisco proprietary protocol. I don't want ISL. I was .1q, but I will fix it later. And notice this N. This means that this protocol was negotiated, that it wasn't set in the configuration. It was negotiated. So let's see if the VLAN was propagated now. Oh, after the trunks came up, BTP was able to distribute the VLAN database. So let's issue show BTP status. The configuration revision is 2. This means that we have made 2 changes to the VLAN database. And let's create another VLAN, VLAN 3, name guests. And this VLAN should get propagated automatically. Sorry. Show VLAN 3. And let's see, the configuration revision went up to 3. Every time I do a change, that configuration revision will go up a number. Let's do a modification rather than a creation. I'm going to change the name of VLAN 3. It is the internet VLAN. It is no longer the guest VLAN. And the change should get propagated, and the configuration revision went up to 4. See that? Okay, I don't want ASL. I don't want ISL in my trunks. I want .1q. So I'm going to set up .1q here manually. Interface range, switch port, mode, trunk. So trunk encapsulation .1q, and here as well. Interface range, switch port, trunk encapsulation .1q, and let's see what happens. Okay, on this side of the switch, the .1q was negotiated. That's why it shows up as N. On the other side, I manually set the encapsulation that I wanted, so it was not negotiated. It was set manually. If I issue show interface gigabit 0 switch port, it says that the configuration mode for the trunk is the dynamic desirable, the operational mode is trunk, the administrative trunking encapsulation is .1q. That means that I manually set it, and the operational trunking encapsulation is .1q. The negotiation of a trunking is on. This means that DTP is on. Let's do that here. Show interface 01 switch port. Okay, on this side, the dynamic trunking protocol is set as dynamic auto. It is on. The interface went into trunk mode, and the trunking encapsulation is being negotiated, and it is right now using .1q because the other side was configured manually with .1q. So surely the other side said, I want to use .1q, so the negotiation ended up using .1q rather than ISL. ISL is old, and only I remember that it only can handle 1000 VLANs, so you want .1q. Okay, so it is working now. Let's break things a little. Let's change the domain name here. VTP domain, probably access. What will happen? We will have switches that have different domain names. So DTP will start complaining because the VTP domains are different, and VTP will not be able to negotiate anything from now on. The interface remain in trunk mode because they were already they had been already negotiated. But if we reset the interfaces, interface range gigabit 0, 1 to 2, if we reset the interface, the trunk should not come up because DTP will not be able to negotiate the trunk. Unable to perform trunk negotiation because of VTP mismatch. See that? So in order to have it work again, let's set, notice something else. The configuration revision was reset to 0. So remember, each time you change your domain name, your configuration revision goes to 0. You can also achieve this by changing your mode from server to transparent and back to server mode, and that way you can reset your configuration revision to 0. So let's change it back to appropriate domain name, network, and the interface. The trunk should come up in a matter of seconds. Remember that DTP messages are sent every 30 seconds. So you have to wait that in order for your trunks to get activated. Okay, only one trunk. We'll have to see why. Okay, I just had to wait a little bit longer, and we have the trunks back up again. And let's see our VTP status. We're back to configuration revision 4 because we joined a domain. Okay, what if I don't want to rely on DTP to create my trunks? I should use static trunking. So let's do that. Let's use static trunking. Interface range, gigabit, 0, 0 to 1, switch port mode trunk, switch port non-negotiable. Use this. If you use this, you will be disabling DTP, and this is the configuration you will need when you connect your switches, your Cisco switches to other brands. For instance, if you want to connect your Cisco switch to a Huawei switch, this is the recommended configuration because DTP is only Cisco. Let's do that here. Switch port mode trunk, switch port non-negotiable. Now I'm going to do that here as well, but I'm going to receive an error. Switch port mode trunk, an error because I am still trying to negotiate the trunking protocol, whether it is .1q or ISL. So I have to disable that first. Okay, I disable trunking protocol negotiation, and then I establish static trunk with switch port, and I disable DTP with this command. So you will need these 3 commands to establish static trunking. Now let's see how it is seen with show interface trunk. You see this, the mode is on. It is neither dynamic desirable or auto. It is on. On. And let's see how the interface is shown using switchboard. The mode configured is manually trunk. Operationally is also trunk. It is manually also to .1q, set to .1q, and it is operationally using .1q. Here it should say off. I don't know why it says on. Let's see. Sorry. The command is switchboard non-negotiable. See? Okay, it is off. This means that DTP is off in this interface. Let's do that here as well. It is off. Negotiation is off, and the operational mode is also set manually. So let's create another VLAN. And it should still work even if we have DTP dynamic trunking protocol off. So VTP works even if DTP is not enabled. All VTP needs is having trunks between your switches in order to work. So now we have VTP with static trunks. Okay, that's it.